Hi, my name is Thomas. My major is elementary education with an emphasis in social studies.
Hi, my name's Michaela. I'm an elementary education major with an emphasis in special education.
Hi, I'm Bryn, and my major is Communication Arts and Literature Education.
Hi, I'm Amanda, and I am a Communication Arts and Literature Education major.
The symbol for my journey is a kaleidoscope. When one looks into the kaleidoscope, he or she will see a picture, and when him or her turn the kaleidoscope, the picture changes. This is how I view my journey from my past, present, and future. My picture of how to view others and becoming a culturally aware constantly changes, just like the picture in the kaleidoscope.
I am using a box of crayons to represent my journey. From the outside, a box of crayons can appear to be very uniform and unchanged. But if you open up the box, you will find that each crayon has unique differences. Some crayons are sharp, some are pretty, some are dull, while others are bright. Some have weird names, but they all have learned to live together in the same box. The same goes for me as a teacher. From the outside, my classroom may appear to look like any other elementary classroom, but no two students are the same. No matter where the school is located and whether or not the students all have the same physical characteristics, the makeup of the class will always be diverse. We all have unique ideas and differing opinions, but we work together to build an understanding of each other.
The symbol of my journey is a gardener with his garden. To become a good gardener, a person must study all types of plants, how they are nourished, and how to make them thrive. Different plants need various amounts of attention from the gardener, but all need water that is not just sprinkled over them quickly, but given in plenty to ensure the nourishment reaches their roots. Having so many different types of plants can be challenging for a gardener, but the beauty of the final product is worth the extra care. When the gardener puts in time and understands the needs of each plant, they are rewarded with a beautifully diverse and thriving garden.
The symbol of my journey is a dictionary. Dictionaries contain the building blocks for our language, words. We don't know these words automatically. We have to take time to try and to fail and to ask questions. Similarly, we are mesmerized with different dialects and accents, yet we often call them weird. They're not weird, just another part of the dictionary we haven't looked at yet. Along this journey, I've had to give myself this same time and patience as I learn to appreciate and understand new dialects of the dictionary of the world. In my classroom, my students will be pushed beyond complacency and find new ways to speak with a new vocabulary that encompasses all dialects.
I grew up in a farming area that was in a rural, white predominant.
In a small town in rural South Dakota.
Like a lot of people, I grew up in a fairly white community. I went to a Swedish Baptist church and a private school that had little diversity.
I also grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota where there was relatively little diversity.
I believe there was a sense of white privilege, and that we truly thought that we were the dominant race and that we were the only race. I believe in our classrooms, we all thought we were from the same country. Our paths were the same because of our skin.
And I remember learning about the civil rights movement probably in later elementary.
Like, we learned about Martin Luther King Jr.
And just thinking to myself like, how horrible was it that people could treat those people like that.
But I believe it just became a routine, and we never really picked up on the historical significance.
I think not even necessarily realizing that in my mind, I was categorizing them as those people.
My mom and her parents were missionaries in Ethiopia, and so she and her brothers grew up in another culture, and they brought that to their families as they raised their families.
Most of my awareness for other cultures and just different people groups came from missionaries who came to speak at our church or family members who had spent time overseas.
So I grew up going to Ethiopian restaurants like the Pasaka and Indian restaurants, and just really enjoyed other cultures. A lot of the children's stories I read were from like Ethiopian legends.
That's where I was introduced to other cultures and countries, and just grew a heart for people of other backgrounds.
That really gave me a heart for other cultures. I wasn't afraid of them, and I was very interested in them. Another thing is my dad worked for the Voice of the Martyrs, so he would come back with stories of other cultures and their struggles.
That has brought me to now, but I truly believe that it continues to work through me.
So that is my experience from early on. I had a very cultural experience.
And this past is something that I realized that was a significant barrier. Presently, I've realized that these barriers from my past have come alive in my mind. There was when I had to help the little boy with the 5 jackets. That day when I was at my placement, I was asked to go help the little boy get his 5 jackets. I had no idea what to expect when I went to his locker.
Presently, in my current placement at Waite Park Elementary, I was helping a young 2nd grade boy look for crayons in his desk.
I realized that they were not jackets. They were jackets that were sweatshirts, which had very many holes and were coming apart.
I spotted the box and I said, "Oh look, you found your crayons." And he opened the box and it was completely empty. There was nothing in it. And he looked at me and he said, "I just keep this in my desk so that kids don't think I'm homeless."
Every day, my cooperating teacher would help this little boy put these sweatshirts on, starting with the smallest and ending with the largest, so that he would stay warm when going home.
That was a huge eye-opener for me. Just to see that poverty is a very real thing for so many students.
I had a barrier between the societal levels with children who are coming from lower class families. I am from a middle class family, and I realized that I need to take the time to understand these children who are coming from lower class families and be able to get to know them and to help them.
Kids define each other by their social lines, and it's important that as a teacher, they realize that we do not define them by those lines, and they are so much more than that.
Presently, at my current placement in human relations, I went to Anwerton Middle School, and I had an eye-opening experience there.
Presently, for my placement at Urban Ventures, a tutoring place in South Minneapolis,
there was one of the last days of class. Everyone was supposed to be doing independent reading, and everyone was except this girl in the very back named Teresa. She was sitting there with her arms crossed, and I came up to her and I'm like, "Why aren't you reading? Don't you have a book?" And she's like, "I've read all the books in there." I convinced her that she hadn't, and brought over a couple selections for her to look through.
I've had the opportunity to lead Bible studies with kids, and I remember there was one time where I had 2 kids, and one of them was paying attention and was really attentive, and the other one was super squirrely and didn't want to be there.
She finally chose Jane Eyre, which I thought was an interesting choice because it's such an old classic, but my description of it had piqued her interest.
I found myself getting really frustrated with the other boy who didn't want to be there and almost wanting to just classify him as a bad student.
So she started reading it to me, and in the beginning of Jane Eyre is being abused by a family member and being treated very badly. And Teresa turns to me and begins to tell me how she relates to that because her own uncle had shot his 2 children. He had shot them because he didn't have anything to feed them.
And as soon as I thought that, I just caught myself and started to remember the things that we've been talking about Bucky and just how we can't classify students as bad students.
That was a really tough reality for me to realize. And I didn't know exactly what to say, but we talked a little bit about it, and it was a great experience for me, if only to realize that these kids have really tough lives, but also they are so resilient and they want to learn so much. And even a classic like Jane Eyre can evoke emotions and be relatable to all students, no matter their backgrounds. And that was really encouraging as a future teacher to know that.
It's so important to get to know our students because I think the more that we learn about them and the more that we know, the more that we want to fight for them and the more that we want them to succeed.
When you come into my classroom, you will see teamwork because our class will work together no matter what our backgrounds are in order to learn.
In my classroom, my students will be exposed to a variety of cultures because I will use every crayon in the box.
In my classroom, you will see respect because I believe with the deepest respect for cultures and other backgrounds, students can best interpret and understand literature and more importantly, understand and improve the world around them.
In my classroom, you will see collaboration because we learn best in community as we find that those who seem different from us are really very similar.